This podcast is brought to you by RAMM Horse Fencing and Stalls, the one-stop shop for your horse farm. RAMM is family-owned and operated and has been in business for over 30 years. We welcome you to call in and speak with an expert about your next project today at 866-653-8984. Again, that's 866-653-8984.
Welcome to Late Night Riders. In this episode, we will talk to Bruce Slusher about natural horsemanship. Then later, in Canter Banter, we will talk about the weather. Bruce Slusher is a natural horsemanship instructor. He teaches communication and safety for both horse and handler. He provides fun and low-key lessons as well as clinics for all types of riders and handlers. Years of TV and radio experience have made him a skilled communicator. Today I'm joined by Bruce, Luke, and Debbie.
Hey, welcome, Bruce.
Well, thank you very much. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Bruce, when you hear the word natural horsemanship, what do you think?
I think it's a marketing technique, really, but what it really comes down to is that it's trying to get people to understand a horse through means that are not violent. It's trying to get people to understand what body language is with a horse and how important that is to the horse, because if the horse doesn't understand the body language, the horse can't communicate with you.
Right.
It watches our body language as well, the horse does, and that's how they communicate in the herd. So it's very important. So natural horsemanship to me is just just trying to communicate with the horse what you want the horse to do. Very simple,
Right.
but not that simple.
Right. Do you want to talk about your start with horses?
Yeah, we can get through that really quick. I'm sure it's pretty boring to most people, but
No, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I started out with a rocking horse about 2 years old. And
Doesn't
his name was
everyone?
Spirit or something like that. Yeah, it is Spirit, and he wasn't too wild. But then I had my first horse right at 3 years old, which really hooked me. And then I kind of got away from it for a while. I went to school, got into radio and TV and some things like that. And then I started getting back into horses again because I missed it so much. And when I moved out to Colorado, is when I really started to get into horses. And this has been 20 years ago. Okay. And I could ride. I could ride anything as fast as you wanted to go. I could ride bucks out. I could do any of that kind of stuff. But then I started getting hurt. And I thought to myself, wow, this is bad. And the coup de grace was, and we talked about it earlier, I got kicked in the chest by a horse one time. And it was a beautiful Appaloosa horse, 3 years old. And I couldn't figure it out because what happened was I tried to mount on the opposite side. All of a sudden, that horse's head came up. And I was riding split reins at the time. And he just took off. And I thought, man, I can turn this horse. You think that horse would bend its neck? No. He took off, and I got behind him, and he let me have it with both barrels, and it's like, that wasn't good. I flew about 5 feet, and that changed my mind about a lot of things. And I had a good neighbor of mine out there that in Colorado that was kind of into the natural communications. And she sort of gave me a book by a guy by the name of Tom Dorrance, and he had already died. He was an older guy. But he had a nice book. And I read that book, and I didn't understand crap. I didn't understand anything. And, because I just thought you get on a horse and you ride, and that's it. Okay, so anyway, she kind of put me onto some people, and I started following some of these ladies and some of these men around that knew what they were doing. They knew about this communication thing with these horses. And it was a whole lot more than just saddling up and getting on.
Yeah.
And that's when I started traveling around. It cost me a lot of money and a lot of time, but it was worth it. I followed some of these, these natural horsemanship trainers around and some of these clinicians around for a long time. Worked on a lot of cattle ranches out in Wyoming and Colorado and places like that where these guys were. And it finally made sense. Try to get in with the horse so he'll cooperate with you instead of forcing the horse to do something, and then you've got a battle. And I weigh 200 pounds. And I've got a 1,200-pound horse in front of me. I'm not going to win that.
No.
And so we didn't want that, And so that's kind of how it had all kind of progressed.
Yeah.
Sorry, might have been a little long there.
No, that's great.
Really good. I don't want to get into questions that you were going to ask, but when you talk about could you give us an example maybe of one of the first few things that, listeners could think about in the way of seeing what the horse is doing and then understanding what, they're telling you to work with them. Could you give us just a couple of examples that might be, things that either our listeners or riders that are listening know, or maybe give them a little more insight?
Sure, I certainly can. It's always better when you're there and you visualize
Sure.
it. But I can talk about that. Here's what I do when I go into maybe the round pen and I have a horse for the first time. Okay, I'll look at the horse and I'll see what he does as soon as I walk into the round pen. If that horse turns away from me and wants nothing to do with me, then I know that, okay, there's some baggage there.
Okay.
Okay, very likely. Or he's really claustrophobic and he wants out of that round pen really bad.
Okay.
Okay, so my next step would be if the horse has already been haltered, that's not a problem. I go up, I'll halter the horse. So let's make it that way. Okay, I'll go up, I'll halter the horse with my rope, the halter, and I'll use a 12-foot lead rope. Okay, I may have a flag with me too as well, and my lasso. Okay, those are the tools that I use. Other people use other things, but those are the tools that work for me, and I was taught that way. So I'll go up, and what I'll do is I'll try to get that horse to at least pay attention to me a little bit. I may try to bump his head towards me just a little bit. If that doesn't work, and maybe he gets a little bit aggressive with me. Okay, some horses do that. They will start to swing those hindquarters towards you, and that's a natural thing.
Then you know.
Yes, then you know you've got a little bit of a situation there. And it's a situation where, depending on the degree of the aggressiveness that the horse gives you, is what you have to give back. And, I had talked, I usually use like the 51-49% rule, okay? Or if you're in business like you are, I use the CEO VP rule, okay? VP, they get a lot of respect, and they communicate with me, and that's fine, and I listen to them. The VP is the horse. I got to be the CEO. If I'm not the CEO, then you're in line to get kicked, bit, stepped on, run over, pushed up against the barn and trapped. Whatever is bad that can happen to a small person like me by a big, horse like that.
Need to be the leader.
That's right.
Yep.
And to go about that is I have to get those hindquarters to move away from me. I can tell you a little story real quick. I was out watching wild horses out in Nevada one time, and I was just watching this old mare that came walking up, and I told this story before. That just came walking up with this group of horses, and here they were around this little pond of water, okay, and it's hot. And this mare says, I want to drink right here where you are. She was she couldn't kick her way out of a snowdrift, probably. Okay, at least I didn't think so. So she comes sauntering up there, and most of these horses, they just all melt away. She looks at them, they just go away. Okay, so then what happens is one of these horses says, I think I'll try to challenge the mare today because maybe I can advance my standing in the herd. All right, so he just stands there. So what happens next? Well, the mare walks up, lays her ears back. Didn't do it. The other horse sort of like turns around like he's going to give the mare a bite. So what happens? Well, the mare reaches right over there and just bites him right in the hindquarters. And didn't work. All right. So what happens next is the mare turns around and then she starts backing towards him. Didn't work. The guy stood right there. The horse stood right there. And then the mare just let him have it. Boom. So what that told me was, you don't just walk up to a horse and start just whacking on a horse trying to get him to do something. Okay,
Yeah.
They understand a sequence of events, and that's how they work. That's herd behavior. That's how they survive. And that's what I learned is when you go into a round pen with a horse, see what the situation is, and then start to ease your way into it and see what you have to do, but don't do more than you need to.
Right.
And it's just so true because an example like that also just, understanding those things lets us see that one rider can ride a horse and then the next rider gets on the same horse and they can't ride the horse. So it's all that leadership that they sense or understand or know from cues and things that you get from the horse and that the horse gets from you.
That's very true. And I'm a big proponent of groundwork. Every day, I do a little bit of groundwork with my horses. get to do less and less and less, once they understand what you want. But I do a lot of groundwork. Now, I'm not talking about lunging my horse for 20 minutes one way and 20 minutes the other.
What do you like to do?
I will normally, just on my 12-foot lead rope, I will just do some of that, hindquarter movement, moving the front end across, having them go by you, things like that actually teach the horse something and reinforce, something that's going to do you some good when you get in the saddle. I'll work on lateral flexion on the ground. I'll work on vertical flexion on the ground. And all that relates to when you saddle that horse up and you get up there, that you can bend that horse's neck. You can bend him around, that lateral flexion. You can pick up both reins and ask him to drop that nose down. And when they do that, they are giving to you.
Yep.
Okay. The thing about it is, when they give to you, the most important thing is that you release. You can give the horse all the treats you want. Peppermints and carrots and apples, all you want. But all that horse really wants when you're riding us is to release the pressure.
Yeah, the reward.
That is the reward, because horses are so claustrophobic and they like their freedom. When you take that freedom away from them, they want that release. And if you do it at the right time, quickly, you're going to have the lightest horse you can imagine.
Yeah.
If you don't, then the horse is going to start doing other things. It's going to start pulling on your reins. It's going to start throwing its head up in the air or whatever. So if you don't get that release right, and that is one of the hardest things for me to teach, and for me to do as well, because sometimes I miss it. Sometimes, if I'm holding a horse and I want him to drop his head and he flicks his ear, to him that's a give. I got to give then. But those things you got to recognize. It's just so subtle sometimes.
Sure.
And that's what leads to softness. Someone can really drop that head down and be nice and quiet and start to develop this cooperation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how often? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So how often are you spending, say, per day, per week, developing these characteristics and communication with your horses?
Very little with my own horses, but when it comes to starting out a horse like this who really doesn't know much, it's not so much that the horse can't do it. The horse can reach around and flick a fly with his nose off its ribs with no problem.
Right.
It's asking the horse to do it when you want the horse to do it. So it all depends on the horse. Some horses are real, quick to pick this up. Other horses have more of a flight instinct, and they said, no, I'm not going to bend. I want to take off. And if you're riding a horse that's not able to bend, you're in trouble. They'll take hold of that bit or, the bitless, whatever you're riding in, and they'll just take off and go, and you can't bend them around. And that is a safety thing. If you can't bend your horse around into a circle, anybody can ride in a circle. But if you can't do that, and I've seen many horses that can't, then you're kind of in trouble. So it just depends on the horse. With my personal horses, I spend 5 minutes. Just before I get on. Sometimes I don't even do that with a couple of them. I'll just hop up in the saddle and just do it right there. But preferably, if you're with a horse that doesn't understand these things, or you don't know if they do it on the ground first. And spend as much time as you can to get them soft.
Because yes, I think you would agree too that the most important thing that any rider can do is that their horse needs to know the stop cue, the whoa cue. That's the most important thing, because if you don't have that, it's not a safe situation.
Yeah, and safety is a big thing. If you're getting hurt like I was years ago, what's the purpose?
Yeah.
You're not helping your horse out. You're blaming your horse probably because you got hurt or because the horse isn't doing what you want. But you got to really look inside yourself and say, okay, am I asking the right questions to the horse so the horse can give me the right answer? And if you really look at it, and if I look at myself and the horse isn't doing what I'm asking it to do, it's probably my fault, because the horses really just want to get along. That is in their nature. That's how they've survived for millions of years, from being an Eohippus about 2 foot tall to these big draft horses 21 hands tall. That's ingrained in them, that they need to get along, to survive. And that's all they want. They operate in the moment. We think in the future. Okay, what if the horse does this? Well, you can't think that way, because the horse may not do that. Don't correct your horse for something you might think it's going to do. Stay right there with them where they're at, because that's how they survive and that's how they think. They can't stand around and maul around and say, well, gee, look at this big black thing coming down the pasture there. Should I run or not? It'd be too late.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'll just take off and go. They go from 0 to 40 in about no time at all, and that's how they survive. They'll run a quarter mile down the road, and they'll turn around and look and see what it is. Us, we'll stand there and stare at it because we are predators. Our eyes are in the front, and the prey animals in the side because they can escape both directions as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So what's the biggest problem clients approach you with?
Trailering.
Yeah, I think
Pretty
that's a
much.
big subject for most, not most
I mean, that's
people,
a
lot
whole
of people.
podcast there, trailering. I mean,
Getting them in,
It
getting
is.
them in the trailer.
yes.
Yes, I believe that's, I believe
And
that as well.
it's really not so much getting them in the trailer as leading them up to getting in the trailer. And there are situations, where you have to get a trailer. It's getting dark and you're out in the middle of a park somewhere and you've got to get them in and they don't want to load. And there are
right.
things you've got to do sometimes that you don't want to do. But generally, if you do the right work, ahead of time, getting to where they'll walk past you and getting to where they'll step up and step back out. Don't just run them in and slam the door. Make sure they can back up. Backing out's one of the hardest parts for a horse. If you got a trailer, you can't move them out frontwards. That's one of the hardest parts is backing out. I mean, can you blame them?
Yeah.
The horse doesn't know. What do you think? It could be 80 feet down there for all
Right.
he knows. He can't see.
Right.
Because that's that one area behind of the 280 degrees they can't see, that little bit in behind they can't see there, and a few feet out in front. Otherwise they can see everything. But you're trying to step down. If I did that to you and said, okay, Debbie, I want you to back out and step off here. And you're like, I'm not too sure about this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you got to. That's what the horse is thinking. And the same way with a mud puddle. He doesn't know it's not 20 feet down. He can't tell.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's the thing I think that I see so many people have problems with. We've seen it time after time. I know you have too, that people will be, at a show or somewhere where they cannot get their horse to load. And I think that's a good thing to think about beforehand, or for us as riders to think about our horses before we travel somewhere. Can we get the horse back on ourselves? Have we done spent the time that we need to spend with them? And additionally, too, especially, puddles, water, whatever the case may be. And even, things that fly in the air, birds, wind, whatever, those are the things that I think that spook a horse that we need to be prepared for and spend some time with our horses with to be on the safer side.
Yeah, on the subject of spooking, I mean, it's our responsibility to watch out for the horse, and you may be riding along the trail talking on your cell phone or, talking to one of your buddies, and all of a sudden this rhinoceros drops out of the tree, and you should have seen it coming, Then the horse goes, whoa!
Yes.
And spooks to one side, and all of a sudden you end up on the ground, with a broken rib, and you're blaming your horse because he's spooked. Well, a spook is basically just survival for the horse. That's all it is, and that is in the brain. It's just a short survival run.
Right.
That's what it is. So you're walking along, and the horse is out in the pasture, and he's looking around, and wow, what's that black thing there on the ground? And takes off running. Well, the other horse is looking, oh, come on, dude, it's just a turtle. He's not going to catch you. But the horse doesn't know that. I've seen horses jump in front of a truck to get away from a blowing bag,
Yes.
plastic bag.
Yes.
That's just how they are. You don't know.
Right.
So that's one of the things you've got to be aware of.
Yes.
And safety is the key, for you and the horse.
And I think most of the people I've ridden for some time understand this, but I have seen this in cases, and where a person will take a friend and say, we're going to ride, let's just get on the horse and go. And I think those are things that, to me, I've heard, being in this business for this many years, so many people that have been, I'll never get on a horse again after that because of what had happened. And I think it's our responsibility as good horsemen and as equestrians to be sure that if we're showing someone, and you do this yourself because that's what you do, you clinics, you do lessons, all kinds of different lessons, private, be it group, whatever, to pre-plan and teach people prior to getting on the horse so they have a good experience, and they want to tell others, to be able to ride, because it's, to me, something that you get out, you get to see things that people just don't get to see. So wonderful, and have younger people come into this as well too. And I hope that we can by having even these podcasts and talking to people, bring more awareness to how wonderful it can be. But learn the good things you should, the safety things first.
You need the basics, and the basics are just communicating with your horse. Body language equals you're getting to the horse's mind. When you get to the horse's mind, then you got that cooperation. You've got that willing partner, and I like to call it partner up. Because I like to have my horse where he's not stressed out all the time,
right?
Wondering what I'm going to do next,
right?
It's a cooperation, and it should be. And if you've got a cooperation with your horse, you're going to be a whole lot safer. And again, I'm a big thing on safety. I mean, I'm just huge on safety, and whether it's individual or groups or whatever it happens to be. I hate seeing riders trying to mount a horse who walking off with them and they're hopping down the trail trying to get on them. I mean, there are a lot of unsafe things going on, and just it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Yeah. Right.
All right. Well, we'll be taking a short break, and when we get back, we will go into our next segment, Canter Banter.
Our next segment, Canter Banter, is brought to you by RAMM Horse Fencing and Stalls, the one-stop shop for your horse farm. RAMM is family-owned and operated and has been in business for over 30 years. We welcome you to call in and speak with an expert about your next project today at 866-653-8984. Again, that's 866-653-8984.
Welcome back. For this segment of Canter Banter, we will be talking about the weather. Bruce used to be a weatherman. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Don't shoot the messenger. That's all I can say.
Tell us about the weather.
Yeah, it's one of those things I really enjoy doing, and horses have always been my main thing. However, I like variety a little bit, and I don't want to get burned out on one thing. So I got educated in meteorology and how to predict the weather, sort of. But really, I don't know what you want to do. You want me to predict the weather for today? Or
I would like to know what you think is going to happen. Yeah, in our future, do you think we're going to get the sub-zero weather everybody's talking about? Do you see storms for us, or what do you think about that?
Well,
we won't hold you to it. But,
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we just want to get your opinion.
Well, it looks like in January, at least for the most part of January, we'll be continuing kind of the pattern we've had with a mild El Nino year.
Okay.
And it should be fairly consistent and a little bit warmer, maybe a little wetter than what our normal year is. We may see some colder weather coming up in February into March.
Oh, okay.
Well, the Farmer's Almanac is calling for a horrible winter.
Well, what do you think? We've had a pretty good winter so far. It's been pretty nice.
It's been pretty nice.
Do you think we'll get a lot of snow this year?
I don't think we're going to get a whole lot. I mean, we still could get a couple of snows here or there, but of course, now I'm just wishful thinking, and I don't like shoveling snow particularly.
Been nice so far.
I don't like getting a tractor out. That seat's cold, and I just that's something I like to do. But
do you have any stories that you could share with us that were a little bit on the funny side? That any of your experiences doing the weather or so forth, or that maybe you don't. I don't know anything that would that you can talk about. Yes, that you can talk about without. Yeah.
We were talking off the microphone earlier about the green screen on TV, and when the weather person's up there, they're just in front of a blank green screen, and they're looking at monitors on either side of them and in the front. And
is that kind of like looking into a mirror when you first get started?
Yeah, pretty much.
Trying to figure it out.
That's the funny thing is you got to get your hands coordinated, and it's interesting to do. But I guess. The funny thing was, I think one time we had a green screen, and I forgot that I wore a green jacket.
Oh, no.
So suddenly my whole top torso disappears, and I'm a floating Halloween head, man.
Oh, my gosh, Bruce, that's hilarious. That is so funny. Oh, my goodness. I wouldn't have thought of that. That is funny.
Yeah, you're only allowed to wear certain colors.
I see.
Either TV stations usually use either green or blue screens.
Okay.
And so that determines on what colors you're allowed to wear. Otherwise, you just disappear.
Oh, my goodness. That had to be funny. Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
And, there are a lot of funny things that go on, but that's one of the funnier things that I can remember. I did a disco move one time, coming onto the scene one time. I just kind of slid on and did the old fingers up like John Travolta. And I just
did your ratings go up that day, I bet?
Yeah, I think they might have gone up slightly. But
I would think so. Yeah, that would be fun to see. I'd like a weatherman or a woman that would be like that. That would be fun.
Well, we tried to have some fun doing it. It's not all that serious all the time.
Yeah.
Of course, there are serious times, but
there are too. Yeah.
We don't like those, but it happens.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting. So, pretty cool. Yep. Do you want to know about the weather? Anything, Lucas? Do you
Yeah.
know?
I was just wondering how. This being an equestrian podcast, how accurate the Farmer's Almanac really is.
That's a good question.
They predict it like 18 months out, correct?
Well, I kind of look at Punxsutawney Phil the same way. They do hit it from time to time, but I could throw it on a dartboard and hit it about. I shouldn't say that, but no, they've had their moments.
Yeah.
But predicting that far ahead is very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even National Weather Service, where a lot of our information comes from, has a difficult time.
How far out can you actually go that you feel like you're, pretty sure of it? I mean, that you feel pretty good chance of it being that way.
Personally, about 3 days.
Okay.
Sometimes you get lucky and you'll get a system that'll stay around a little longer.
Sure.
But, you're predicting a lot of 7-day forecasts you see will change within a couple of days.
Okay.
It's so around the Great Lakes area. It's so vulnerable. To
it changes
change.
quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does change
I mean,
quickly.
you got lake effect in Cleveland
Sure.
on the other side. You've got
Right.
Lake Michigan on the other side.
Right.
You've got all these lakes, various areas, and
Right.
it's difficult.
And once it gets humid in the summer, it's pop-up storms and.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
What's your favorite cloud cover? What's the name of your favorite cloud cover, or do you have one?
Blue sky is my favorite.
Blue skies.
Maybe a couple little puffy cumulus clouds up there.
Cumulus clouds.
But,
there you go. But blue skies.
Blue sky and sunshine. I love
Okay.
that.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast and encourage you to share with all of your equestrian family and friends. You can tune into the Late Night Riders podcast show every Friday night. Each episode will be uploaded exclusively on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with our latest shows. Do you have a topic you'd like us to discuss? We want to hear from you. You may email us at podcast@ramfence.com or feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you again for listening.